Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today is part 2 of our head rebuild series. We thought we had a crack in our 843 head, so we're going to be working on reassembling it today. I've got our new one here. It is nice and shiny, all clean. I got that from Midwest Bayless. They're out of Ohio. I'll drop a link in the bottom for their website. That's where I get all my parts from, and they're always available to help you with tech advice or anything like that. I call them probably once a week just to make myself feel a little better. But before we get started on that, I want to make sure you guys subscribe, like, or leave any comments on the bottom. We're over 250 likes now, or comments, over 250 subscriptions so far, and that is great. That is awesome. We're going to strive for 500. Let's double it. Let's get to 500. A lot of people watch these videos and don't subscribe, but subscribing helps me make more content. So the more that subscribe, the more stuff I can do, and the more I can make, and more things I can tackle and do for you guys. And hopefully this is all stuff that will help you out. But we're going to get started today. Just make sure you subscribe. I'm going to get us set up here. We have all of our valves clean. We have the nice clean head here. We've got all of our threads cleaned in the head from part 1. And so we are going to get set up and start putting this all back together. So let's get into it. All right, so you guys see that we have all of our valves out here on the front, all laid out, all in the order that which we cleaned them. And this is our new head. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to take a Sharpie, a nice thick one, and got this little chisel tip on it. And what we're going to do is we're going to mark on the valve seal here pretty heavily. And we're going to do this for each valve. So we're just going to do this one as an example. And so if there's any area of the valve that is not touching the mating surface, we'll know because the Sharpie won't wipe off. So as it rubs, all this Sharpie should rub off. So we're going to go to this first one here, which is our exhaust on cylinder 4, because this is the back here. So we're going to just press that in there lightly, just the weight of your finger, and we're just going to spin it. See, I'm kind of turning it there. If I can get my finger out of the way. We're doing that. Get some wiggle room on there. So we can see, I don't know how well it's going to show up on the GoPro. They're not the best for close-ups. But you can see, I can up close. I'll see if I can get a better picture. But the mating surface, the middle, is all nice and clean. All the Sharpie wiped off. I don't know how well it's going to show. But we do have some Sharpie left on the top and the bottom, which is pretty normal. But you can see, I don't know if that's going to show up either. I'm trying to get you all as many angles as possible so you can see where it's shiny from the Sharpie still, but where it's kind of matte is where the Sharpie's rubbed off. So this means our valve seats evenly all the way across. So what we're going to do is, for the rest of these valves, I'm going to zip through it for you guys. We're just going to do a valve guide test. We're just going to Sharpie them up, go all the way down, and test them out. So let's get these done and taken care of. Alright, so these are your exhaust on the outsides and your intakes are on the inside. So you can, I don't know how well it's going to really show, but there's a matte stripe in the middle all the way around. But if you look at these intake ones, you can see it's shiny on the tip only, as I spin it around, you can see it's only shiny on the edge there, and right there we don't have any contact because it's black. See where the shine disappears? And on here, this one turns out okay, but then you see more dark shows up here, and it gets shiny again. The intakes or the exhausts all look good, but this is how it should look. See how it's nice, shiny all the way around, nice and thick? And this one's just on the edge. So what that means is we need to lap those valves. I've got a compound, it's a grinding compound, looks something like this. Got it from O'Reilly, it's only like $5. And since we're here and it's not a perfect seal because these aren't the original valves with this original head, since we're switching them out, we do need to lap these valves onto here. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that. Let me set you up on the tripod here behind me, and I'll get y'all set up and show you how to do that. Alright, so we're going to be using this fine compound on these. We don't want to start with the coarse because if we have to, we can always step up, but it's a lot harder to step down from that point. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some of our packing that it came in, and we're going to take our valve and we're just going to take our finger and dabble it on there. So I've just got a little dab, just like that. I'm going to rub it on the valve there. And this is just like a liquid sandpaper, basically. Get it nice and coated even across the surface. Wipe off the excess off my finger. And so this is 4 right here. This is our first, this is number 4 cylinder. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be spinning this behind. So if you have a piece of like old fuel line, like 1/4 inch fuel line, that'll be great for this. Or if you have, and you can attach that to a drill. But there is a special tool for this also. It's got a little suction cup and you just work it back and forth on the top like that and it laps it. But we're going to do it this way just so you can show that it can be done. So what I'm doing is I'm mating it all the way up to the surface, just like that. And on the back side, you can see where the valve comes out. So all I'm going to be doing is twisting it by hand. And we're going to be working it back and forth back there. And we're going to, it's going to eventually ooze out just from the friction. Then we're going to step it up, take it back out, clean it off, and redo it. And then we'll redo our Sharpie test. You can kind of hear the rubbing there. And as you rub, it'll eventually start to get quieter and quieter because it's starting to smooth out. You can see it's already so much quieter. So what you want to make sure you do is as you're turning it, you constantly pick it up out of the seat and rotate it. That way you get an even wear. Just like that. So we're going to give it a test. So I'm going to clean up the surface. Just going to clean off all the compound off of it. And this is a lint-free towel, a shop towel. A microfiber towel would work. And you can see how clean and shiny that is compared to the rest. See how these are nice and shiny. And these are... So we're going to retake our Sharpie. We're going to re-black it. Make sure it's nice and even. Then we're going to reseat it. Then we're going to see how it turns out this time. So you can see, I don't know how well it's going to show up, but it's the matte on the bottom, all that bottom half of the seat, and the shiny on the top. I don't know if that's gonna, if you can kind of see that. It's also kind of hard because I can't really put a whole lot of pressure on it to really rub off that Sharpie, which is probably why these look the way they do, but this is a good example anyway, because your hands are all greasy and you're trying to grab onto a super smooth metal end. So, and that is how you're going to lap the valves. and you can already see it's starting to really clean up. So that's how you do it. You just go all the way down. You just do one by one by one. And I'm going to do that for these other 3 intakes because our last one was super clean. But like I said, I really think a lot of that's because we couldn't get a good grip on the smooth end. It's just super smooth, so it's hard to get a good handle on it. So we're just going to keep going through that. We're just going to rinse and repeat. Do that for these other 3 valves and clean them up. I might end up doing it for all the ones that have the surface rust on them anyway, just to clean them. That way we don't have any friction on the mating surface. So I'm going to do it for all of them that have the friction, the little bit of surface rust on there. And if yours is still pretty bad after that, you can upgrade to the coarse, because this is just the fine. So this is only doing very little. So I've got that covered. That's going to come in here. So we see the before. I'm going to seat this valve. My hands are all greasy, so I'm not going to get a good grip on here. Might have to find my gloves. You can hear that sandpaper doing work. I usually do a 90 to 180 degree flip when I lift it. That way you make sure it's nice and even. You don't want to have take that out. Clean this off. Get all that out. You don't want any of that sand material, compound, grinding stuff in any part. So we wipe this off. You can already see how much cleaner it is. A little bit of dirt from the color of the compound, but you can see all that rust is gone. So I'm just gonna zip through these real quick. Y'all get the idea. I don't have to show you each and every one, but that's just how it's gonna work. I'm gonna get these 2 cleaned and these here at the end done, and our 1 intake for cylinder number 2 cleaned up also because I didn't clean up very well when we did our Sharpie test. So let's knock these out and we'll move on. All right, so we've got our valves lapped. You can see what a difference that made. It's a nice big shiny surface on that intake valve. So all of our valves are going to mate so much tighter and so much better, and you can see how clean all of those came out to be. We don't see any real pitting, coarse material that are going to cause air gaps, because if we have gaps we lose compression, and compression loss is lost power. So since we're already here, it was a good idea to get that taken care of. Might as well. We're sitting here on the bench and we've got all the materials here in front of us. So we've got that taken care of. So what that means next is we're going to clean these really gross, nasty springs. I'm going to do is just take some brake clean to them, get them all cleaned up. Maybe a water wheel on the caps if they need it, because you can see they're kind of grimy. So we're going to get those cleaned up. You don't really want to see a bunch of cleaning, I don't think. So we're going to get that cleaned up, and then that means that we can start moving towards reassembly of the head, which is great because we can finally move on to the fun stuff. So let me get those cleaned up, and then we can probably start getting these valves put in, and then we can hop back into the engine bay and see where we end up. So let me clean these up and we'll come back. Okay, so I have those valve springs being cleaned right now. So while they're out there sitting with the degreaser getting all that junk off, what we're going to do is we're going to hop underneath the car and I'm going to take the drain plug out. So what I've done is I've actually left no oil in the system, but there is coolant in the block. So I don't know if, let me shake the car a little bit. You can kind of see the shaking of the coolant that's in the block still. So what we're going to do is we're going to hop underneath the car and we're going to pull that drain plug and see if some coolant comes out of the pan. A drip or two may just be residual from when we took the oil out, but if it's a significant amount, then we know we have a crack in the block. A few people commented on the last video that a cracked head is very uncommon or not even heard of, but cracked blocks are definitely more common, which is across manufacturers, not just these alone. So let's crawl underneath here. We're going to pull out that drain plug and take a look. All right, so hopefully that light isn't washing you guys out, I have to kind of work around the exhaust here. We're going to get this drain plug out. To see if anything comes out. If it's a drip or two, like I said, then it's probably just some leftover stuff that's finally settled. Yeah, that just looks like residual oil that's settled over time. Yeah, it just looks like oil to me, the stuff that's finally settled after these couple days. So I don't see a mass amount of coolant, which is a good sign. So I don't think we have a crack in the block. So I'm going to tighten this back up. And it's been probably 4 or 5 days since we did part 1. So this has had been plenty of time. So if there was any cracks in the block, all that coolant I think would have drained into the pan and into here, and we would have seen it. So I think we're safe. So that's a good sign. All that work we did on this block isn't wasted. So let's get back on top and take a look at those springs. All right, so here's that oil that came out of it. You see it's still got some viscosity in there. It's not all runny. Still nice and thick. We put in the Shell Rotella 15W40 when we figured this out, that we had this problem. And so it's pretty thick still, that 15 weight. So I don't think there's any coolant in here. We don't see streaks of rainbow from the coolant or anything. So I think we avoided the crack in the block theory, but it was always good to check. So at least it's not that. All right, we're back here checking out our springs. They're already looking way better. Just using some foaming degreaser. You see all the rust coming off of that. The rust color, but it's just all the grease and stuff. So that's getting clean. We'll do a final rinse of these, and then we'll do some brake clean, and we'll spray some WD-40 or some sort of PB blaster or something like that on this. That way they don't flash rust or anything like that. You can kind of see that one's oozing off all that grease and stuff. So if we have a chance to get all this stuff out of the system right now, might as well. We don't want a bunch of little particles floating through our oil this early. So let's wait for these to clean up. We'll do a final rinse and coat them, and then we'll be able to start reassembly. All right, so we're going to start reassembly. This is number 4, 3, 2, and 1. And that's how our springs are lined out right underneath you here. I've got them in order. We cleaned off all the caps. And we cleaned off all the springs. They look a little chalky, but that's just the brake clean on them. So if you want to go even further, we could have probably wire wheeled these, but it's not going to hurt anything. So we're going to start with number 4 exhaust, which is going to be on this side. And we're going to be using a couple things. We're going to be using some penetrating fluid to lubricate the guides as it goes in. We're going to put this in the actual guide itself. And then we're going to use some engine assembly lube. You can get this off the shelf at any auto supply place. And you will actually lubricate the shaft as we go in. That way, when we go for first startup, everything isn't dry, that's all well lubricated. So I'm going to start putting this one first together, and we're going to... I almost forgot my spring compressor. I'll grab it. But anyway, we're going to start here with exhaust number 1. We're going to lubricate the guide. I'm actually going to come from this way, just to make sure you don't spray yourself. Just fill it up, something like that. Then we're going to take some of our engine lube assembly lube, and we're going to put it on all the shine of that. We're going to rub that in. That way it's all nice and covered. And we're going to slide in our valve, just like that. So then when you have that in, you're going to turn it around, and then we'll start putting the springs and the keepers on. But I think I'd like to, I don't know, you can kind of do them one by one, or you can put them all in and then start clamping them and putting them in with the keepers, because I kept the keepers in order. So let's just do one. I'll grab my spring compressor. We'll do one. That way you guys can see how it all goes back together. Because it's going to be the same thing over and over again. So let me find out where I put that thing and we'll come back and we'll put it on. All right, so I'm down to the very last one and I'm going to show you guys step by step on this one. So this is cylinder 4 exhaust at the very end. Again, we're going to coat it. We're going to take some of our assembly lube. We're going to coat it nice and even. Wipe off the excess. Got to have a good grip. So we're going to feed it through. And when I feed it through, I kind of give it a good twist as I go up. That way we get that assembly lube coating all the way in there. And as you bring these up, you want to make sure you don't have any play. So as I'm holding this in tight, there's no wiggle. It's not going anywhere. Which means there's no play side to side, which means that we won't, hopefully won't end up with a bent valve in any way because there's no slop. So we have our springs put in. We're going to put our top retaining clip on. That assembly lube kind of helps hold that valve in there so it doesn't drop out. But it shouldn't drop out very easily, because if it does, then that means you have too much play in the guide. So we're going to press the spring, get it nice and centered. We're going to take our retaining clips, and this is that taper I was telling you about. Let's see if I can kind of. So it's wider at the top, skinnier at the bottom. The skinny side goes down, and it's got this a raised section in the middle, and that goes on the top of the valve, and it holds it there. Drop those in, and I learned that if you do it like this, you don't have to fight gravity, so all part of the learning curve. So those are in there pretty good. Make sure our guides are sitting in the gap, and it's okay if they lay a little bit, because we're going to release this slowly. And there you go. It's in there. And what I like to do is, even though it's on there all the way, I like to give it a couple taps. You hear that nice springy sound. Bring y'all in. And you can see they're all seated all the way. Nice and seat. Now if you have a 903 head, you'll end up using valve guides like this, with the little rubber caps and those little springs on them. But if you have an 843 or an 817cc head, you will not have those. So if you get a kit, they'll come with it, but you won't need them for an 843. So what I'm going to do is a quick test. Set y'all up here. I'm going to do a quick test of the springs. Awesome. So those are seated all the way, which is the hard part done. So now that means we get the exciting part of now we can move into the engine bay. So let me get some of this put away, cleaned up, so we don't have a mess to deal with later. And we will move into the engine compartment and start reassembly. So let's knock it out. All right, so first things first is we're gonna wanna make sure that our head surface is nice and clean. We don't have anything stuck to it. Looks good. Nothing crazy going on. Cylinder heads, pistons all look good. We have a new head gasket, thanks to Midwest Bayless. That's the part number. That's what I'm using there. We're going to open it up. Be very careful not to cut it, because you don't want to have to be delayed for another one of these. So we've got that open. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a it's called a spray gasket. It's a tacky sealant for head gaskets and valve covers and things like that. So it says that we need to let it sit for a few minutes to allow it to set on both sides. So we're going to get this sprayed up, taken care of. We'll come back and we'll set it on. Alright, so we've got our gasket coated. You can see it's got this nice red and it is super tacky, so I'm trying not to touch it. But we make sure that we are in our locating pins. It's a super tight fit, so you have to kind of force them on there a little bit. Oh, this stuff is super sticky, which is fine with me. I'll take that all day. See if we can use our socket here to help us out a little bit, so we don't get it on our fingers. It's a really tight fit, which is exactly what you want. There's that. See if I can give it a left tap. Really get it on there. There you go. Nice and seated all the way on there. And of course, when we torque the head down, it'll pull it down with it. So that is on there. Perfect. So now that we've got our valves in, we can move to put the head on. So hopefully this is the last time and no more, because I am over it. So grab some of our bolts. I had coated the bolts in that same material as well, because it doesn't hurt. So start getting these in here. And I cleaned up the threads on the wire wheel, so there's no junk in the threads. I want to make sure these are truly torqued as they are. Now the reason I put this on the threads is because the thread holes go all the way to the coolant channels in the block. So I thought they were blind holes, meaning that they're solid on the back and they eventually bottom out. But in reality, they don't. So I want to make sure that no coolant comes up through these channels, and so it doesn't hurt to throw on a little spray on those as well. All right. And our short one. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab my air ratchet and I'm just gonna zip through these real quick. So I'm just gonna speed y'all through it because it is kind of loud and I don't wanna make your ears ring. Now before I start, I'm not gonna be putting them all the way to torque this way. I'm just getting them in to set the head in. I'm not gonna, once I feel any sort of tension, I'm stopping. Alright, so we're going to start torquing the heads. The head bolts call for 28.9 foot-pounds per bolt, but I'm going to do 30-31 because we do have an adapter on here and it's a longer socket so that we can reach them all, just to compensate for that. So we're going to do a two-stage torque in the pattern that it's supposed to. These are all just snugged up to the washers. They're not really torqued or anything. And we're going to start here in the middle first. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like that. And we're going to torque them down. So the first one we're going to do is 15 foot-pounds. We're going to start here in the middle. Here. Got to change. So now we're going to step it up to 30. And we're at 30 foot-pounds. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to do the same pattern, torque it to 30. So that's all of them torqued. I'm gonna go over one more time just to make sure that all of them are torqued. We went in pattern, but I want to make sure, and it's good practice. So we'll go through real quick. All right, so all those are torqued, so that means we can do our quick run through of reassembling the rest of the head. Now that these are all taken care of, I can start putting the push rods in, then I can put the rocker arm assembly on, and then I can put the thermostat on, put in our temperature sender, and finally our intake, and reattach our exhaust. So I'm gonna zip through it for you guys, but let me get reset to get stuff lined up and we'll knock it out. Alright guys, so we have the system all put back together. Everything is put in place. See if I can get each other. Everything is back to normal. Everything is where it's supposed to be. So what I'm going to do is I've already put some oil in it and I've let it all settle to the bottom. Went and grabbed some lunch, came back. So it's all settled. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to top off the coolant system and then I'm going to leave it. And we'll come back in a couple days and we'll check the oil again to make sure that we've solved our leak issue, and hopefully that's going to be it. So I'm going to top off some of this coolant real quick, and hopefully nothing else leaks out. So let's fill it up. Alright guys, so that's going to do it for this episode. We got from a bunch of pieces to putting our head back together and on the car. That was a lot of information, so hopefully that's something that can help you guys out. I will be putting the torque settings that I used, at least what the manual has, available in the description. So in case I didn't say them in the video, or even if I did say them in the video, I will make sure that they are in the bottom there, along with those links for the pieces that I've used. Guys, just make sure you subscribe, like, comment. If you have any questions, drop it in the comments below. I'll do my best to help you out. I don't know everything, but I'll do my best to answer your questions if I can. Next episode, hopefully we'll get this thing running and at least driving out the driveway. We still have our big dumpster in the driveway, so the car's not going to go very far, but it would be awesome to have this thing just turn the key at the ignition, start right up, and just get to be able to pull out and back up, and maybe we can get some wheels spinning on some jacks to go through the gears. So that's going to do it for this time. We're going to let this cool and sit and see what we come back with in a couple days to make sure there's no mix in the oil. So we'll drain the oil and check that, make sure there's no milkshake. So until next time guys, don't forget to subscribe and we'll see you then.